Welcome back to another crochet tutorial with Cozy Rosie UK, and today I'm going to be sharing with you the Running Rings circular cushion. There's already the Running Rings square cushion available on this YouTube channel, and today I'm showing you how to make the circle version. Before we get started, don't forget to hit that subscribe button and of course the notification bell so you never miss out one of my crochet patterns or tutorials again. Now I've worked my cushion up in 3 different colours, and it's up to you if you want to do it in 2 colours, 4 colours, 6 colours, however many you want. I think it does look really nice worked up in 3 different colours. All my testers use different colour combinations to make their very own cushion, but they all use the same weight, which is a bulky or a chunky weight yarn. I'm going to be using Paintbox Yarns Simply Chunky in these 3 different colours. So for my colour A, I have paper white, and then for colour B, I have bubblegum pink. And this shade is 352, which I'm not sure, which I think is a ballet pink colour. I can't remember the exact shade name of this one. I've also worked this cushion up in green shades. So again, I use the paper white, but I use pistachio for colour B and sage for colour C. The amounts of the yarn that you need to make 2 of your cushion panels is for colour A, you're going to only need 80 meters of bulky weight yarn. Colour B, you're going to need 105, and then for colour C, because we use that to join as well, you're going to need 125 meters. I'm going to be using a 6mm crochet hook, and we're going to check our gauge when we've worked up 5 rounds, just using our tape measure. So you're going to need to have your tape measure on hand as well. We're going to measure after 5 rounds to check that we're at the right size. I've used a 14-inch circular cushion pad. Some of my testers just inserted a 14-inch square pad, and it filled out the shape as well. You're also going to need a pair of scissors and of course a darning needle so that we can finish off our pattern and get those ends woven in. This cushion is going to be worked to create 2 of these panels, and you can see that they do curl in because we don't increase on the final rounds, and that means it's going to make it super easy to join. So let's gather all of those materials and get started. So we're going to begin with colour A, which for me is paper white. And I'm just going to make a slip knot and place that onto my hook. And we're going to start by making a chain of 4. So we just yarn over and pull through 4 times. 1, 2, 3, and 4. We're then going to slip stitch back into that first chain that we made, right in front of where our slip knot is. So just yarn over, pull through, and then straight through the loop on our hook to create a ring to work into. You may see a hole where you've just slip stitched. Try and ignore that. We're going to go straight into the middle of that ring. So for the rest of round 1, we start with a chain of 3. That's 1, 2, and 3. And we're going to make a further 11 double crochets into the middle of that circle we've created. So we begin by yarning over and insert our hook into the middle of that ring. I'm also working over my end at the same time. So we yarn over, bring up a 3rd loop, yarn over, pull through 2, pull through 2. The beginning chain 3 that we made counts as a double crochet, and we're making an additional 11, so give us a total of 12. So we've made 1, we've got to make a total of 11. So we yarn over, reinsert into the middle of that ring again, pull through 2, pull through 2. So that's number 2, 3, this is number 10 and number 11. So we've made 11 double crochets, and that beginning chain 3 counts as our first double crochet to give us a stitch count of 12. So 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, and 12. We're going to join to the top of our 3rd chain. White was not the colour to choose. So there's 1, 2, the top chain is just to the side of that stitch. So I'm just going to insert my hook through the chain, bring the yarn back over and slip stitch to join. to create our circle. Now if, like me, you're changing colours every round, you can fasten off at the end of each round. Just makes it really easy to identify in the following rounds. I'm going to fasten off by making a chain of 1 and using my scissors just to fasten off, ensuring I've left a length long enough to weave in later, and use my hook just to bring that through, and that gives us our first circle. If you have worked over your end, when you pull that, it will help close the hole, and when we weave this in later, we can use the weaving in to completely close that middle hole. So making sure that you have that stitch count of 12 at the end of round 1, we're going to join into any stitch just by inserting our hook, and we're going to join colour B, which for me is this bubblegum pink. Just going to place it over the hook with the tail at the back and bring it through. And we begin with a chain of 3. Once again, this chain 3 counts as a double crochet, and we're going to work a second double crochet into that same stitch that we joined into. So we're yarning over and reinserting into the same stitch that we just worked into. I'm going to work over my end as well, and this time we're working a double crochet once again. So it now looks like we have 2 double crochets worked into the same stitch. We're going to work 2 double crochets into each stitch around, doubling our stitch count from 12 to 24. So we're yarning over, insert into the next stitch. You can still work over your end if you want to help bury that. Working 1 double crochet, and then we're yarning over and working a second double crochet back into the same stitch again. I'm just going to repeat that all the way around. I want to get to where I've joined so I can show you how that looks. So we're just making sure that there are 2 stitches coming out of each stitch around. So that's number 1 and number 2. So it's really important when you get to where you slip stitched and fastened off that you just pay attention to where the posts of your stitches are. So you can see that we've got our beginning chain 3, and this is where the end came out, but we also need to work into this stitch. So it's going to look like we're going to skip a stitch, but we're just skipping the slip stitch where we joined. So I'm actually going to go at the top of this chain 3 where we joined. So I'm yarning over, inserting into where I joined, and working those 2 double crochets. So that's 1, and back into where I went before for number 2. So it doesn't look like we've skipped anything, but the stitches look in the right place. So this is that stitch we've worked into, and then we need to work into the next stitch, ignoring our slip stitch. So this is my next one here, making sure I pick up both loops of the stitch, working 1 and number 2. So no one can see that we've skipped a stitch, just looking like we've worked into our stitches as normal. So continue around working 2 double crochets into each stitch around, and at the end of round 2 you'll have a stitch count of 24 double crochets. So the way that I count them is I simply count the pairs of stitches that I've worked. So you can either do 2, 4, 6, 8, 10, 12, 14, 16, 18, 20, 2 and 4. So we should have a stitch count of 24. Once again, we're slip stitching to the top of that first chain 3 that we made. So 1, 2 and 3, slip stitching to join, and then we can fasten off. If you're carrying on in one colour, I'd recommend you slip stitch across the next stitch and into the space between the pairs. Because I'm changing colour, I'm just going to fasten off and use my hook to bring that through. Because for round 3, we're joining in between any of these increases we've made. So we're just literally inserting our hook, not into the stitch, but into the space in between. And this time, of course, we are joining colour C. Again, I'm just going to bring that through We are, of course, making a beginning chain of 3 that counts as our first double crochet. But this time we're going to work back into that same space that we've just joined, and we're working a further 2 double crochets. So we yarn over, insert back into that space between the pair of the posts for number 2 and for number 3. We're then going to work around, working between these pairs of posts, working 3 double crochets, so our granny stitch, into the space between the pairs of our posts. So we're yarning over, inserting and working 1, reinsert for number 2, and reinsert again for number 3. So from a distance you can see we're working in between, not into the stitches. So yarn over, insert, and work 3 double crochets all into the same space between those pairs of 2 double crochets. So we're going to continue around working 3 double crochets into each space around, and at the end of round 3 you're going to have 12 3 double crochet clusters. So continue around and I'll meet you when you've worked your last block, when you've worked your last 3 double crochets. Just working my final 3 double crochet cluster, or granny stitch as it's more affectionately known, and we're looking a little bit like that. We're going to join to the top of our chain 3, so 1, 2 and 3, and once again we're joining with a slip stitch, and we can fasten off just where we are if we're working in multiple colours, or you can slip stitch across if you're working in one single colour. So at the end of round 3 you're going to have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11 and 12 3 double crochet clusters. Looking a little bit odd with that tail hanging out. There we go. Going into round 4, I'm going back to colour A, if I can find the end. There we are. And with this time we're joining in between those 3 double crochet clusters. So we're just inserting our hook in between any of those 3 double crochet clusters and bringing that new colour back through. We begin with a chain of 3, which we know counts as a double crochet. But for round 4, we're going to be working 4 double crochets. So that's our first one. So we're working an additional 3 double crochets into that same space between our 3 double crochet clusters. So our chain 3 and 1, 2, 3 double crochets. We're then stepping over and working in between those 3 double crochet clusters. This time we're working 4 double crochet clusters. So we're yarning over and working 4 double crochets into each of those spaces between the clusters from the previous round. Just making sure that we are working 4 of them. So continue around working 4 double crochets into each of these spaces between those groups of clusters from the previous round. We're not going to be increasing in the fact that we're still going to have 12 clusters, just this time they're made up of 4 double crochets. So we're just increasing the number of stitches that are being worked by adding them into the cluster. Continue to repeat working 4 double crochets into each space between the clusters from the previous round, and I'll meet you to join at the end of round 4. So once you've worked into each of those spaces around, you should still have 12 crochet clusters, but this time there are 4 double crochets in each of them. So 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11 and 12. Just like before, we're going to join to the top of our chain 3, so 1, 2 and 3, and we're just slip stitching to join, and then we can fasten off. I'm going to make a little chain 1, ready to change to our next colour. And for round 5, we are going to be working both in between the spaces of the cluster and in between the middle of our cluster. After round 5, we're also going to check our gauge to make sure we're going to have the correct finish size. So I'll join with you and show you where we're working each of these clusters. So we're inserting, it's easiest to work by joining in between any of the 4 double crochet clusters. I'm joining with colour B. So once again, I'm just placing it over my hook with a long enough tail to weave in later. Bring it up. And we're starting with a chain of 3. And we're only working a second, so just 1 more double crochet into that same space that we've just joined into. And we are then going to work in between the 2nd and 3rd post of our 4 double crochets, in the middle basically. So you can count 1 and 2, and then we're joining in between there, which will leave 2 posts next to it. So we're yarning over, count 1, count 2, going in between the posts, so it's in line with that cluster space below, and we're working a further 2 double crochets. So it will look a little bit like that. We then skip the next 2 double crochets, working into the space in between the 4 double crochet clusters. 1 and 2, that's where we're going to work, in between those posts. And we're working 2 double crochets. We're then working into the space between the clusters themselves, working 2 double crochets. And we're going to work in between, so 1, 2, that's where we're working those 2 double crochets. We're going to repeat this all the way around, so we're going to double the number of clusters that we end with, from the 12 that we had at the end of round 4 all the way up to 24 2 double crochet clusters at the end of round 5. So continue around working 2 double crochets into the spaces between the clusters, and then into the middle of that 2nd and 3rd post, working 2 double crochets each time. And I'll meet you at the end of round 5 to join, and where we're also going to measure and check our gauge so that we can confirm we're going to finish our cushions at the right finish size. Just worked my final 2 double crochets in between those clusters. So I have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, 13, 14, 18, 19, 20, 21, 22, 23 and 24 2 double crochet clusters at the end of round 5. Once again, I'm joining to the top of my chain 3 and just slip stitching before fastening off, because I'm changing colours once again, leaving a long enough tail to weave in later. And at this point we can check that our gauge matches. So it's not going to lay 100% flat because we've just really increased, but it should be reasonably flat and not too wavy. And we're looking for this circle after round 5, and you're just measuring straight across the middle, and we're looking between 6 and 6.5 inches. Well, I couldn't get more spot on if I tried, and that's going straight across the middle. You can fold it in half if it makes it easier for you to measure across the top. Oh, come back, nice little empanada there. And it literally is bang on 6.5 inches. If you are bigger or smaller, you may need to adjust the size of your cushion, but you can also go up or down a hook size. If you make your hook bigger, your circle will end up bigger. If you make your hook smaller, you'll get a firmer fabric and you'll be able to make your circle a little bit smaller as well. Going into round 6, I'm moving on to colour C, and we are joining between any 2DC group with colour C. So once I've inserted my hook in between any pair of 2 double crochets, just placing that yarn over my hook with the tail at the back and bringing it through. For round 6 we are joining with a chain of 3, and we are working a further 2 double crochets into that same space. So that's 1 and 2. Make that end look a little bit neater. And we are working in between these pairs of 2 double crochets, working 3 double crochets into each space around. That's 2 and 3. So we're just stepping over the cluster and working into the space in between, working 3 double crochets into each of these spaces around. We should maintain our count of 24 clusters. Just this time they have 3 double crochets. So continue to work that all the way around, working those 3 double crochets into each of the spaces between your 2 double crochet clusters from round 5. And I'll meet you at the end of round 6, where we're going to repeat this round 2 times. So I'll meet you shortly. So at the end of round 6, you should have 24 3 double crochet clusters, and we're simply joining to the top of our chain 3, ready to fasten off. So for rounds 7 and 8, we are joining in between those 3 double crochet clusters, making a chain of 3, and working a further 2 double crochets back into where we've just joined before working around in between each 3 double crochet cluster, working 3 double crochet cluster. So we're going to be working a granny stitch in between each of the clusters from the previous row, just like we did for round 6. We're working round 7 in colour A, and then we're working round 8 in colour B. So once you've worked round 7 and 8, I'll meet you back. You should maintain your stitch count of 24 3 double crochet clusters all the way around, and we're going to go on to round 9 once we've worked these 2 rounds. I'll see you shortly. So I'm just slip stitching to join on round 8. So I've worked those 2 extra rounds of 3 double crochet clusters, and you should still have a stitch count of 24 3 double crochet clusters. And just to let you know that not to worry, because we have not increased, it will look like it's curling in or out, as the case may be. So we need to increase a little bit more. So for round 9, once again, we're just joining in between any of our clusters, and I'm back to colour C, in between any of our 3 double crochet clusters, into that space in between. We begin with a chain of 3. We're then going to work a further 2 double crochets into that, oh, split my yarn, into that same space that we've just joined into. And instead of working 3 double crochets into the next space, we're actually going to work 4 double crochets. So we insert and work 1, 2, 3, and 4. Into the next space around, we work 3 double crochets once again. That's 1, 2, and 3. Into the next, we work 4 double crochets and 4. We're going to repeat this pattern all the way around, working 3 double crochets followed by working 4 double crochets into the next. When we get all the way around, we should be working 4 double crochets into that final space. So for the next one, we've worked 4, so the next one we're working 3 double crochets into the next space, and that's number 3. So then we work 4 into the next. That's 1, 2, 3, and 4. Continue to repeat that all the way around. You should finish on 4 double crochets into your last space between your clusters, and I'll meet you at the end of round 9. So I'm just on my final space and I'm working 4 double crochets into that final space. This is number 4. And just in case I've made any errors, I'm going to quickly check that I have got 3, 4, 3, 4, 3, 4, 3. Just double check they are still correct. So we haven't actually increased the number of clusters. We're going to do that in the next round, which is why we have those 4s to work in between. At the end of round 9, we are going to slip stitch to join to the top of that chain 3, and then fasten off, ready to change colours once again. And we're back to colour A. So for round 10, we're going to join into any space before our 4 double crochet cluster. So I've got my 3 double crochet here, there's the space I'm joining, and next to it I've got a 4 double crochet cluster. Joining with colour A, and we're going to begin with a chain of 3. That's 1, 2 and 3. We're going to work 2 double crochets into that same space that we've just joined into to create our granny stitch, and then we're going to work 2 double crochets in between that second and third post of our 4 double crochet cluster. So 1, 2, we're just joining in there, and we're working 2 double crochets. That's 1 and 2. In the next space, we are working 3 double crochets. That's 1, 2 and 3. And we're going to repeat that for a second time, working 3 double crochets into that next space again, in between the clusters. So that's 2 and 3. So we've worked 3 double crochets, worked into the middle of that 4 double crochet cluster, working 2 double crochets. We've then worked 3 double crochets, 3 double crochets, and we're back to our 4 double crochet cluster. We're working into the middle of there, working 2 double crochets. So that's 1 and 2. Looking ahead, we have into our spaces, we're working 3 double crochets, and that brings us back to our next 4 double crochet cluster where we work 2 double crochets into the middle. I feel like I'm saying double crochet an awful lot. So into our main spaces between our clusters, we are working 3 double crochets. That's 1, 2, this is number 3. We do that for a second time into the next space between the clusters. 2 and 3. And then into our 4 double crochet cluster, we're working into the middle, simply working 2 double crochets. That's 1 and 2. We're going to continue to repeat that all the way around, back to the beginning. And obviously we're going to end, do it the right way up, you can see. We're going to end working into that space after the 4 double crochet. So continue to repeat it around, working into the spaces between the clusters, working a 3 double crochet, and then when you get to your 4 double crochet clusters, you're working into the middle with just 2 double crochets. Continue around and I'll meet you at the end of round 10. I'm just working my final 3 double crochet into that last space, and then of course we are joining with a slip stitch to the top of that first of our beginning chain 3. I'm fastening off, ready to change colour. So at the end of round 10, you're going to have a total of 36 clusters. 24 of them are going to be your 3 double crochet cluster, and you'll have 12 2 double crochet clusters worked into the middle of those 4 double crochets. For round 11, we're joining in between any of the clusters that we've made, and I'm joining with colour B. That the wrong way around. There we go. And we're just bringing our hook through, making our beginning chain 3. 1, 2 and 3, and we're simply working a further 2 double crochets into that same cluster space, and then we're working around, working in between each 2 and 3 DC cluster, working a 3 double crochet cluster. That's 2 and 3, working into the next space between the 2 and the 3, but we're just working 3 double crochets this round. Back to simplicity. So continue working around, working 3 double crochets into each space between both your 2 and your 3 double crochet clusters, and I'll meet you at the end of round 11. You'll have a stitch count of 36 3 double crochet clusters at the end of this round. So at the end of round 11, we are of course just slip stitching to join, and we should have a total of 36 3 double crochet clusters. Just going to fasten off. Oh, where's it gone? There we are. Oh, that's a bit tight, wasn't it? And then going into round 12, we're simply repeating round 11, but this time in our final colour. So this is the final round of granny stitches that we are doing for round 12. I'm working in colour C. So for round 12, we are just simply repeating round 11, beginning with our chain of 3, working a further 2 double crochets into that same space, and we're just working 3 double crochets into each space around, just as we've been doing. That's 3, and we're just continuing to work that all the way around. At the end of round 12, I'm going to meet you because we're going to start working our join. So continue around working 3 double crochets into each of these spaces between our clusters, and I'll meet you for the end of round 12 going into round 13. Worked all the way around, working 3 double crochet clusters into each of those spaces. We are of course joining to the top of our turning chain or beginning chain and just slip stitching, but this time we're not fastening off. We are going to continue on working in colour C for round 13. So you should still have 36 3 double crochet clusters at the end of round 13. At the end of round 12. Going straight into round 13, continuing with this colour, we begin with a chain of 1, and we are simply working into each stitch around, working a single crochet. So into the same as where we've just slip stitched, we just insert our hook, yarn over, bring our loop up, yarn over, pull through 2. There's our next one, so make sure we pick up both loops. And the same again. We're not working into the spaces this time, we're just continuing on, working a single crochet into the next stitch. And we're going to repeat this all the way around, working 1 single crochet into the top of each stitch around. So continue all the way around, working 1 single crochet into each stitch, and I'll meet you at the end of round 13. Just working my last few single crochets. That's the last one. So we should now have a stitch count of 108 single crochets, and we're going to join to the top of the first single crochet that we made. If this is your first panel, we're fastening off, and then we're going to repeat round 1 to 13 again, and I'm going to meet you here, but we're not fastening off our second panel. So go ahead, fasten off, weave in all the ends of your first panel, and if this is your second panel, leave your final yarn attached because we're going to use this to join our panels together. Just bring your hook up or secure your loop with a stitch marker. Go ahead and get all those ends woven in, and then we're going to start joining our 2 panels together. I'm trying to be very careful here and not pull my loop too much. So once you have your 2 panels done and all your ends are woven in, they should be completely the same size, fingers crossed. And what we're going to do is join these 2 panels together, and we're going to insert our cushion pad about halfway round so that we don't have to try and stuff it afterwards, because if we leave a nice bigger gap, it makes it a bit easier without stretching our panels to get that cushion in. So first things first, we need to make sure that we have the right side of our projects facing. So that means you've got the pretty side of your cushion showing on both panels, and we're going to put them wrong side together. And what's really important is that you take the time to match up your 3 double crochet clusters, so you should almost be able to fit your hand through both holes, because we're going to join. I find that where I've just fastened off, turn that way. So this is my last where I've just joined on round 13 and woven in all those ends, of course. Just going to make sure that they match up with those first few stitches. We're going to be continuing in colour C. Just going to move that. and this time we're working through both panels. So this is our seaming. We're going to be joining these two panels together. We start with a chain 1. We're going to insert our hook into the same one that we slip stitched into, and with our second panel we want the first stitch above that first stitch of our 3 double crochet cluster, and we're going to work through both loops. So it looks like you've got, oh, I put my yarn the right side. So from the third post we're inserting our hook, and we're simply working a single crochet through both of our panels. And then we're making sure we correspond with the same stitch again. If you hold them together, you'll pretty much get the same stitches together. If you're not sure, make sure that you're not working back into one you've already worked. And we're in the final stitch of this 3 double crochet cluster, and we're in the final stitch of that one, and we're just single crocheting them together. So it gives us a nice little edging and a little border as well. We're going to continue to repeat working 1 single crochet through both panels, ideally through the corresponding stitch, because you should have the same stitch count on each panel if you've followed your stitch count throughout. And we're going to join all the way up until you're about, I would say, 2/3 of the way around, and then we're going to insert our cushion pads before we finish seaming. So continue to work around, and then I'll meet you ready to insert your cushion pads and get this beautiful cushion all finished up. This has got to be the fun part when we're trying to insert this giant cushion pad into our actual cushions, or into the cover. So just kind of be brave and shove it in. Let's not have the label in the way, that would be annoying. And all that's left to do is is to continue working around the seam and finish off our seaming. Gets a little bit more tricky because things are a bit more spaced out. You can, of course, push your cushion pad down, gotta figure out which one's which, and get it out of the way. We're just continuing on with our single crochet join all the way around back to the beginning. So it's a little bit, I find it a little bit more fiddly once you've got your cushion pad inserted, because you always have to pay attention to where you're working. But I really do like how this seam looks against our cushion, because it just gives it a nice little ridge. But my cushion is very, very plump. But yeah, as soon as you have finished, as soon as you've finished joining the last remaining stitches all the way back to where you joined, and then with your final end, once you've joined to your first single crochet of the round, we're simply going to make our fastening off and push our needle through the seam and out one of these holes. We can't weave it in very well, but we can bury it inside is the best suggestion I have for you. So I want to thank you so much for joining me for this video tutorial. I absolutely love this cushion pattern. If you're looking to make a corresponding square cushion, you can of course check out the Running Rings square cushion. It was originally released as a crochet along because it was in a few sections, and you can find that using either the link in the description box below or in the top right hand corner. Thank you as always for joining me. I will see you in the next video.